So I didn't go on a date in 10 years. I had a big career. I was busy. I was managing bands. I was starting tech companies. I was focusing on everything except for finding a partner. But I wanted a family. I wanted to be a mum, and I didn't want to be alone for the rest of my life. I don't know, honestly. I think I was just scared. Anyway, I decided to change, and I made a resolution: one date every week for an entire year. It was so hard. I dated for 3 years straight. In the end, I dated 138 different men. I got my heart broken, I got humiliated, but I wrote a book about it. Not just people who are looking for a relationship, but I think if you're looking for a relationship, it'll be super useful. But there is so much more that I learned. I learned about myself, I learned for my career and my business, I learned about relationships with my friends. Now my relationship Hello. Welcome to Love in Lockdown. I'm Rebekah Campbell and I will be hosting this event. I'm very excited for the conversation tonight. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are all meeting on today. I know we have people from right across Australia, we have people from New Zealand, we have Martin, one of our speakers, joining us from Wales. So we are all over the place, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we are all on today. I also want to acknowledge that it has been a really hard time over the last couple of months, particularly for people in Sydney, but now Melbourne as well, and New Zealand now as well. Particularly, we have so many singles joining us tonight, and I know many of you are at home on your own, and I want to acknowledge that it's a tough time. But hopefully we can have some fun this evening and also learn some stuff as well. We have joining us Dr. Martin Graff from the University of Wales in Cardiff. I can see Martin there. I thought some of you might have thought when I sent out the, when we were promoting this event, you might have thought it was a typo, that he was actually from the University of New South Wales. But no, Martin is joining us from Cardiff in Wales. And I invited him to join because when I started researching the psychology of relationships and dating during COVID, a lot of the articles I was finding were written by Martin, and I started watching his videos and kind of went down a rabbit hole of looking at all of your work. So I'm very excited for the conversation tonight. Just before we want to start, I want to acknowledge RSVP, who have really put these events together. RSVP is a dating site in Australia, and I used it on my 138 dates, along with all of the other dating sites. And I can say about RSVP, what makes it different is that it is for people who are a lot more serious about looking for a relationship. So there's a lot of kind of just meeting and having fun sites, but RSVP, you've got to put a bit more effort into creating a profile and actually connecting to people. So if you're someone who's serious, then and you're not on RSVP, then I recommend that you check it out. Just the format for tonight, before I go into introducing Martin, we're going to have 20 minutes with Martin and Ruth Osborne, who is a Sydney psychologist. For those of you who have read my book that you just saw, Ruth is the psychologist that I saw. I first met back in 2008 and then saw through my whole journey. So much of her advice is in my book. So I'm going to be bringing Ruth on screen in a minute. But first, I just want to introduce Martin. As I mentioned before, your research is everywhere. You specialize, maybe you could tell us a bit about your background and what you specialize in, rather than me continuing on.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks, Rebekah. Okay, yeah, I'm Martin Graff. I'm speaking to you from Cardiff in the UK, in actually the south of Wales, if you know the geography. And I'm a senior lecturer at the University of South Wales, just up the road from where I live here in Cardiff. And my kind of research interests have been for about the past 10 years in the psychology of romantic relationships, online dating, use of social media. So anything to do with how we kind of use technology to facilitate and maintain and sustain romantic relationships. So that's where I'm coming from. You can check out my website if you want, martingraff.com. There's a whole lot of articles there on relationships and so on. So yeah, I guess that's my background really.
Thanks, Martin. We just put a link to your website in the chat for people who want to check it out. I was watching your video yesterday, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about that video. First, you started to talk about studying relationships. So I want to know, just to start us off, why do you study relationships and why are relationships important?
Okay, I guess my kind of interest in relationships really came from when I was a undergraduate student. We had quite a kind of interesting lecturer, I guess, who studied this, and that kind of fascinated me then, and it's fascinated me for quite a long time now. So I guess I've just become interested in that because it was the thing which interested me most in psychology. Relationships, or the study of, it's not just a kind of frivolous pursuit, studying relationships. Relationships are really important, certainly good relationships. We know kind of from our research that good relationships means that people are generally happier when they're in good relationships. They're generally healthier, and you might be surprised to learn that people generally kind of live longer if they're in good relationships. That shouldn't kind of make you think, oh my God, I'd better get in a relationship really quickly. I mean, because if you're in a bad relationship, then it's the opposite. You're generally less happy, less healthy, and probably don't live as long. So you might be better off maybe not being in a relationship than being in a bad one. So they are, it is important really to study why we're happy, healthy, and live longer in relationships, and why that is really important to us. So that's why relationships are important.
So you have studied all around the world. I know you've spoken in the UK. You've also spent time in Australia and New Zealand. I'm just interested in how you see, or do you see any difference in the way people date in different countries?
So I think essentially all these countries are kind of westernized cultures, and probably people are kind of seeking the same kind of thing. But interestingly, looking at online dating profiles, for example, we know that there are differences in the profiles, little differences. For example, and I hope I'm not saying this in a derogatory fashion, but French people apparently tend to show off a little bit more in their dating profiles. Australians tend to portray themselves more as being a lot more sporty. I know that Australia is a big country for sport. Irish people apparently tend to look happier in their dating profiles. So there are little kind of differences is there in the way in which people advertise themselves through their dating profiles. But essentially, I guess that people are all seeking the same kind of end goal, if you like.
Yeah, interesting. Another thing I found interesting in your video was just a small point that you made around humor, and it was around how you watching, a couple on a first date, how you can tell if it's going well and if there's sexual attraction. And you said something about, if there's humor for a man is different than if there's humor for a woman. Can you just tell us a bit about what you found there?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about humor, everybody tends to put in their dating profile, not everybody, but lots of people tend to put things like, I want someone with a good sense of humor, which is unsurprising because nobody writes, I want somebody with no sense of humor, do they? That would be a little bit bizarre. So everybody wants some really good sense of humor. What do we mean by good sense of humor? We're talking about that in terms of what we call humor production, being able to generate sort of good humor, and humor appreciation. In any kind of interaction, we generally find it rewarding if somebody's kind of funny and is humorous, not all the time, but cracks the odd joke kind of thing. That is generally kind of rewarding. Being able to produce humor is also indicative of the fact that there's a little bit of empathy between people, that we understand the same jokes, we're on the same kind of level. But what you mentioned there about humor being predictive of sexual attraction, it's generally sort of incumbent, generally almost the responsibility of men to be able to produce humor and for women to appreciate humor. There's a kind of long and convoluted reason for that, which stems from evolutionary psychology, but essentially it's to do with the fact that generally in sort of attraction, it's for men to display, if you like, and for women to kind of signal some kind of sort of positive response to that. So in any kind of sort of what we call mixed sex dyadic interaction, i.e. male and female talking together, it's the amount of humor, or amount of laughter rather, which is produced by female, which is more indicative of sexual interest rather than the amount of laughter, which is produced by a male.
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Martin. I might just bring Ruth up, and I've got a couple of questions for Ruth and then a couple of questions for both of you. Before we go, I should have mentioned before, yeah, we've got two members of our community who have joined us, Sandy and Helen, who will be putting questions to Martin and Ruth. But if you would like to ask a question, please start adding questions to the Q&A. I'm not sure if you can upvote, but I'll go through as many of them as we can. So please put your questions in the Q&A. The ones closest to the top are the ones that I will see first. Also, it's really cool if you keep the chat going. We want to create as much of a sense of community as we can at this time. So if there's something interesting that you'd like to point out, please use the chat. Ruth, it's lovely to see you. For those of you who've read my book, Ruth is a big star of the book. I saw Ruth as my psychologist through my 138-date mission, and she was a huge support. So I wanted to bring her in today so we had two perspectives, an academic who studies relationships and also a psychologist who sees real people in the field and where they might be getting stuck. So Ruth, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the role that you've played in my life. Yes. I wanted to start by asking you, I know that you see a lot of people in your practice who are single and who are looking for a relationship. And I'd like to know, where do you see people getting stuck?
Okay, well, I think that connectedness is a very big part of being human. That's why relationships, we were tribal and we like to be connected to other people. It's also a safety mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of women's, look for security in partners. And, and that's why a lot of the boxes they tick are about reliability and security. I think Martin talks about conscientiousness being a big plus in partners,
Yeah.
But I think people get stuck. A lot of the people I see, well, it comes from a lack of self-confidence in the beginning and fear. It's a fear. Everybody fears being rejected. Nobody likes rejection. And
Yeah.
when you actually meet somebody who you don't know very well, you're asking for acceptance. And if you don't feel that you're getting that, it's devastating, as you know, Rebekah. You've had to, go through that along the way, haven't you? And sometimes, but you have to be realistic, particularly if you're going to be do internet dating. I think you have to research as much as you can and ask your friends, if you've never done it, how to do it safely, and get help with your profile maybe, because there's certainly an art to doing it safely and successfully, I think.
And so what do you mean by being realistic? I'm curious about that point.
Okay, well, a lot of people think, if they don't meet, they go into it with the attitude that I want to meet the love of my life.
Yeah.
Which I know in the beginning, that's sort of what your goal was.
And what kind of vision do they have for the love of their life? And is that what you're saying is unrealistic?
It's quite complicated, because I think a lot of what people think is what they want is not really what's right for them in the end. Because a lot of, I don't want to get complicated psychologically, but a lot how people see themselves in opposite sex relationships often has a long history from their family and from their other experiences with other, males or females. And I think they bring that baggage with them particularly, and that's what they're guarding against. Yeah. So they come into it defensive right from the beginning. And okay. I think that's one of the things that in your book, Jeff McDonald recommends that people go and get therapy so that they can work out a lot of their defensiveness and do a lot of self-acceptance, along the way or before they even start, really.
So people are looking for things, for their own, because they are insecure about something in themselves, and they're missing what they actually need, which is.
Well, they've got a story. We all get stories about ourselves from early relations, from our.
Give an example, just so to.
Okay, if you have a father who left when you were 4 years old or 5 years old, or even a little bit older than that, then you're going to be very guarded about being hurt by men, aren't you? So you may be oversensitive and you may look for rejection because that's how you see yourself as the sort of person that did get rejected. You know, so that's why your history, to understand your own relationships history, is really quite important when you're going out in the dating field.
That's very good advice. Another question I wanted to put to you, because you do couples counseling, is the other end of the relationship. When you must see a lot of couples that are on the brink of or are going through breakup, divorce. So what is it that you see in terms of what advice can you give to our singles now in terms of what to look for that might, you know, that be, what do you see as predictive of successful long-term relationships, I guess, as opposed to, you know, what are the traits of people that tend to break up?
Yeah, well, you know, there's the most famous couple therapists sort of in the world that everybody quotes, Gottman.com. And it's a good thing to actually look up there and learn a bit about what makes a relationship work and what, you know, what can ruin a relationship. But, you know, people often get together through need early in life. And as they get stronger and change in themselves, the need changes. And sometimes they diverge, really, you know, as people. But I think that if you can communicate with each other and talk about, you know, a lot of the people I see, the problem is they can't talk about, you know, they don't have a partner that is open and willing to talk about the problem in terms of, you know, it's like right and wrong rather than we have a problem, how do we solve this problem?
Yeah.
You know,
so you look for someone who's self-reflective, self-aware.
Well, somebody who's actually empathic.
Yeah.
Somebody who, and that's why it goes back to their relationship history, because if they haven't learned empathy in their relationships, it's very hard for them to show empathy to other people because they've formed a defensiveness about themselves that, you know, there's a wall that they won't break down. They won't, you know, they won't accept and listen to the other side of the story.
Okay, that's very good advice. Look for someone who's empathetic and who's self-aware, is willing to kind of look at your perspective as well as their own perspective.
Yeah. But can I just say one other thing? I always ask all my clients, you know, on the first or maybe the second date, ask them about their mother. If they're women, you know, I always say, ask the guy about how does he get on with his mother? Because basically that's the relationship model that they bring, unless they've learned along the way to do better. That's where they position themselves. And if they don't have a really good relationship, you might be the one they work all that aggro out with.
Okay. I remember that was some advice that you gave me early on in my journey. Something I'm going to put to both of you now, Martin and Ruth, like Ruth, you see people on their first dates or after their first dates. Martin, you have researched a lot of first dates. So I want to talk about that first date. How should it go? Have you got any advice for kind of how to be on a first date, the kind of questions to ask, you know, any red flags to look for?
Well, yeah. Do you want me to go first? I can say a couple of things. I was going to say, if you meet on a dating site, for example, at least you can maybe communicate and have a little bit of a chat before you actually meet on a first date, which allows you to maybe, I don't want to sound wrong, but to eliminate anybody you don't want to talk to. I think, again, if you meet on a dating site, to meet this kind of as soon as possible. You don't want an internet sort of pen friend. You want to meet somebody. You want to see what they're like. You want to see the whites of their eyes and see what they're actually like, I think. If you're nervous, I mean, that's fine. It's rather like engaging in a kind of sporting event or something like this, where you're going to be a little bit nervous. That's a good thing. But just try to think that you're going to have a nice time. maybe, have something to talk about if you feel that you're going to be a little bit shy and you're not going to be able to talk. Come on with, a little bit of sort of ready conversation. I think I've done that myself in the past. Just have a couple of things you can sort of go to if the conversation just, dies a little bit. Don't bring anything too political or controversial into the conversation. Until you know somebody, you can't really chance those, extreme kind of religious or political attitudes early on. And again, if the conversation is dying a little bit, one really, really good trick is to talk about the other person. You want to find out about them anyway. But having that conversation, don't forget, it's not interrogation. One of my ex-girlfriends, her mother used to talk to me and ask me questions all about the geography of Wales and things. She wasn't asking about me. It was a bit like a sort of a quiz time with her. She was just asking about all these things because she was a little nervous, I think, about talking to me, perhaps. And obviously, and I'm going to say this because people actually do it. You may think this is a shock, but maybe don't talk about your ex too much on the first date, perhaps. And that's not a good thing. Don't look at your phone. Again, that's a don't. I'm just saying that because people actually report even doing that. So do those things, but don't look at your phone. Don't talk about your actual relationships. Talk about the person you're with and have a good time, I think.
Thank you, Martin. Good advice. And there are a lot of people that look at their phones on a date. I will attest to that. Ruth, when I first came to you and told you I was going to go on a date every week for a year, you gave me some really good advice on how to handle the first date. And something I do want you to bring up is around being judgmental, because you thought I might be the kind of person that would kind of judge and assess quite quickly, and that would get in the way of me forming connection. So I'd love if you could talk a bit about that and what you see.
Yeah. Well, I think, judgment is, most of what motivates us is about survival and feeling safe. And so judging people is a way of us figuring out, are we safe with these people?
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, everybody, as I would have said to you, and I'm sure, most of my clients, everybody creates their own survival manual through their life. And because of what happens to them, they sort of mark off the danger things, that actually trigger them. And that's what they're really looking for. And that's why being judgmental, it's not a very good way to learn about somebody, because what you focus on, you tend to amplify. So if you're looking for the problems, you're going to find you're going to find more problems, and you're probably going to miss what's good about them. And that's why sometimes it takes more than one date, because I think everybody's nervous on a first date, even if they've been talking, that face-to-face thing is, I think under COVID, a lot of the people watching under COVID now, it's really quite stressful, because there's not a lot of stuff to talk about when you do meet, because nobody's doing anything.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of distractions that can ease the date, because it's one-on-one usually, and it's a walk, or stop and get a coffee or something. But all the things that sort of make people feel more at ease are missing at the minute. So I think it's pretty hard.
So that was my next question, actually, going into is how dating is changing during COVID. I know that Martin, you've just written an article in the conversation that I read about this. How are you seeing dating changing? How do you think dating will change? How has COVID changed dating forever?
Well, certainly in terms of the sort of current situation. As Ruth was saying, that people can't meet in kind of lockdowns. We had a period here where people couldn't meet up, certainly. But and I'm sure you're going to disagree with this, but there is some evidence to suggest that maybe women are going to be a little kind of less choosy, perhaps in the kind of long run, about who they meet. Any kind of sort of priming about any danger in the environment apparently makes women perhaps a little bit less choosy about who they meet in, for all kinds of reasons. There's also some evidence as well that it kind of creates a situation where women are more likely to use dating apps now, and maybe not necessarily perhaps for the purpose of meeting people, but people want that kind of contact. People want that kind of bit of validation. So, to interact on a dating app, even though you can't meet at the moment, at least gives people that feeling that they're perhaps not isolated so much, and they're getting that validation by connecting with people. So it's difficult to predict perhaps how that's going to pan out in the future, and whether that will stay with us or whether that will disappear, as the coronavirus eventually goes away. But certainly it's created that situation at the moment. We've also seen in the UK as well the rise of what we call turbo relationships, where people have maybe met a little bit, and they're kind of having to decide, well, in a lockdown, do we get together, do we not, and making that decision very quickly, whereas ordinarily perhaps you'd have time to sort of see what somebody's like and maybe move in with them, maybe not. People are kind of moving in with each other a little bit faster than maybe they ordinarily would. So there are some ways in which the pandemic might have changed things, I think.
Thank you. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Ruth. I think we'll bring on one of our special guests now. Sandy, you attended the webinar last week, and we messaged and spoke yesterday.
Yeah.
We had a couple of questions that you would like to put to Martin and Ruth. Do you want to start by just sharing us your story? Where are you? You look like you're in San Francisco right now.
Yeah, I wish I'm in San Francisco, but I'm in Sydney, stuck in lockdown. Yeah.
Tell us about your dating journey, where you're up to, and then you've got a couple of questions.
Okay, so I'm 28 years old, and for the past 4 years, I've gone on more or less about 190 dates in the past 4 years. So yeah, I got 2 relationships out of those the past 4 years, but I've been single for majority of the times during those 4 years. So it's always been very short. And so one of my questions is just like, I often feel like I'll go on a first date and I'll come away thinking it went really well. Then I don't hear from them again. Or if I do, they often say they see me more as a friend rather than anything romantic. Sometimes I wonder if I should just ask them straight out for feedback. Like, what do you think I might be doing wrong? And how can men, how can I get a man to see me more of a romantic interest than just a friendship?
Ruth, do you have any advice for that first off?
Well, I think, as I said to you, every relationship is a contract. It's if you're selling what they're buying and they're selling what you're buying, that's how people make that's what works in relationships. And often people, a lot of people, guys particularly, and girls on dating apps are not ready to say, they're not looking for a long-term relationship.
Even if they say they're looking for a long-term relationship.
Well, I think it's more like women are that likely to say they're looking for a long-term relationship. Along the way, if men feel they're ready, it's all about timing, really. That's why they say timing is so important in relationships. You've got to get a sense of what this person is looking for. That's what Martin was saying. When you sort of ask questions and show interest, what you're trying to do is make, doing research, you're trying to make an assessment about, is this person looking for what I'm looking for? And, that doesn't mean you ask them on the first date, if they're ready to get married, or, are they looking for a long-term relationship? Because they'll run for the hills, most of them, I think. But I think you've just got to be, go slowly. And the other thing is, the thing about friend, lover, if you think of yourself as a desirable person, if you go to that first thinking I'm lovable and I'm desirable, and they would be lucky, if I gave myself to them, they would be really fortunate because I have a lot to offer.
Yeah.
You know, that I think that you tell people how to think about you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, when I'm on a date, I feel like I'm quite confident, and I try to be, try to be as confident as I can, and as well as being myself as well. And having these like positive thinking, like I'm a desirable person, but it just hasn't really worked too well for me. And then I start to wonder, like, is it like attraction? Is that the problem? Or is it because maybe maybe I've got a very strong personality? So I started to come up with all these conclusions, but I've just never asked them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think
I
Rebekah,
think,
one of the things that Rebekah at the beginning, do you remember, Rebekah, I said to you, you can't be, so, you know, show no you got to make a space for where they fit. If you're too confident and you're good, you've got a career, or you're happy and everything. I mean, happy is good, they like happy, but I think you can't be too capable, because men like, they're fixers and they like to feel that they're needed. And so sometimes, women nowadays are almost like men go, well, what do you need me for?
Mm.
I found this very hard advice to take, but I do think it's true.
And I know it's not popular with women.
Right on, who's
you know about men. I don't know, Martin, you'd be an expert on that.
yeah. Well, being a man, I guess. I'm just going to go back, Sandy, to what you said earlier about going on lots of different dates. I think you're almost kind of like a victim of the situation in some respects, because now we've got online dating and we've got much more choice, and there are far more people with whom we can connect. If you contrast that with sort of 50, 70 years ago, you'd probably meet somebody in the same town. You have very limited choice. The very fact, and this is a thing in psychology, is that it's a thing what we call the paradox of choice. The more choice people have, the poorer they are at making decisions. So given that you're kind of one of probably many people on a dating site, which somebody's looking at you and looking at other people, it's not you, it's the very fact that people have so much choice, which makes them very hesitant and think, oh, maybe I'll just try one more, I'll just try another date. It's kind of difficult. And I know, Rebekah, you said you had many dates, but when you're kind of making a choice from that kind of array of people, it becomes rather more difficult, I think. I think what as well, going back to what Ruth said, you have to sort of think about what we call in evolutionary psychology your kind of mate value, what you bring to the situation. And I know Ruth was saying that if you kind of over sort of play yourself, that maybe men might think they're not needed. But you got to kind of be yourself. You got to think what you bring to the situation, and at the end of the day, I'm sure that there'll be somebody who's lucky enough to be with you. But it's almost the kind of circumstance that I think at the moment is the fact that the array of choice means that people are very poor then at making decisions about what they actually want.
I think just that advice that Ruth gave you as well before is really good advice, and it's very hard, because in one point you're being told to be yourself, and the other point you're being told to show vulnerability and to allow someone to step in and support you with something. But both, they don't have to be they're not, one doesn't rule out the other. I spent a lot of time trying to think, should I be confident about my career, or should I kind of play it down because I don't know whether that would intimidate someone. And then I took Ruth's advice about, okay, you're a product. You've got a whole lot of unique features. Part of those unique features is that you have a big career, and you're going to find someone who's a match for that and who wants that. But at the same time, there are going to be areas in your life where you are more vulnerable, or you could really do with someone to support you in, and you've just got to look for those and be honest about those as well. So it's a combination, I think, of like men and I think everyone. And that's how connections are formed, really. I feel like it's like, I like it when I meet a friend who needs something where I feel like I can support them, that's how I form a relationship. And I think it's the same for romantic relationships. You kind of, if you have everything together and you don't need anyone else, it's hard to form a connection or feel like, you know, I can contribute to that person, which makes me more attracted to them and like them more.
So should I go on a date next time and find an activity that I'm really bad at, like maybe rock climbing or something, so that they like something that they're good at and I'm not so good at?
I think it's just that combination of being yourself and being yourself, but looking for those vulnerabilities that you can show where, so that you're not, you know, that's, I think it's.
I think it gets unique, doesn't it? I don't think, speaking as a man, not a psychologist, I'm not always looking for someone who's not as good as me at something. I'm sure if you were to come over to my house and cook me a meal, and you know, you'd be much better at that than me, you know, because I hate cooking. So, that's my vulnerability.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you so much for being brave and joining us on the webinar as well. I'm going to bring on Helen. I know you have another question. I'm going to try and get to it, but I want to bring on Helen just so we're not running too short on time. Helen, thank you so much for joining us. You also reached out and have a couple of questions that you wanted to put to Ruth and Martin. Do you want to start by sharing where you're up to and your you know, you had one big question.
Okay, well, I'm 59 years of age, and I've been dating on and off for about 3 years. And whilst I had lots of really nice dates, men generally wanted to see me again, but I often didn't feel a great attraction or connection to them. However, I did meet a couple of men and I did have my heart broken a couple of times. And I was a bit surprised because I'm 59 and I've sort of got a lot of life experience. I was a bit surprised that would happen. And I'm not really clear on how guarded I should be when I meet someone and develop feelings for them. And do I guard my heart or just guard it a little bit? And how do I stop myself from getting heartbroken and dealing with it?
Ruth, you must.
Well, I think, you know, one of the real basic things that makes for good relationships is trust. You know, the trust that the other person will, you know, care about your needs as well as their own, sometimes even ahead of their own, because, you know, that's the compromise that sometimes goes on. But it takes a while to build up trust, you know, because often people, they seem very trustworthy. And I mean, as Martin said, this is a whole different context, dating. You know, it's like, you know, I always say to people, why would you fish in a bucket if you can fish in the ocean? So try internet dating. But you got to realize that in the ocean, there's sharks and they're not all looking for pals. Some of them want to eat you. Yeah, they want lunch, you know, and so they've got to be good salesmen. And a lot of people who you know, a lot of people who are charming and can convince you. I hear it all the time. You know, but I thought we were getting on really well and then he just disappeared. You know, so it depends what the agenda is. And I think you have to go slowly and just guard your heart to a certain extent until you've convinced that this person is reliable and is really in it, you know, for the same reasons you are.
And do you have any tips on that? How do you know if that person is reliable? How do you build that trust? And
how they behave, really. You know, if somebody I was seeing, you know, they were texting them 6 times a day, they were talking all the time, you know, they looked like a great partner and they were really very attentive. And then suddenly they just dropped off and there was no explanation. You know, something happened. Now, whether it, like Martin says, unfortunately, it's a smorgasbord. You know, internet dating is a smorgasbord. Men you know, are sort of built to have sex with as many women as they can if they're just looking for sex. And maybe, you know, maybe something shiny and, you know, has caught their attention or you know, who knows? There's lots of reasons why people change their minds. Some of them are not ready to commit and are frightened that that's what you want. But,
Yeah.
you know, I think that you just have to be careful. Martin would probably have more to say about that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think it is a case of sort of guarding yourself. I think, I mean, don't invest too much. Don't jump in with 2 feet too soon. You know, again, as I said to Sandy, that, you know, internet dating, while it allows us access to lots of possible dates and, you know, possible relationship partners, there's a lot of people doing it. And what we're seeing now is that there are what we call back burner relationships, where people are internet dating, but they're not just dating one person. Perhaps they're dating, you know, they're seeing several people, which kind of gives rise to what we call ghosting, where people can just disappear, perhaps, and, you know, don't take it personally. It's just because they are seeing other people and they're thinking, well, I found somebody better, I can just, you know, stop contact with that one person and go somewhere else. And, you know, it does allow people to actually do that. As I said, in the days when you only met people in the same town or even the same village as yourself, you know, the choice is limited. You knew what people were doing, you know, you'd see them the next day, so they wouldn't just disappear, would they? But through internet dating, people can disappear, and invariably do that because they you know, they are maybe are in contact with several people at the same time. So if you're in contact with, say 10 people, and you think, well, you know, this is just getting a bit too much now, I'll stop contact with a few others. So that kind of, going back to it, that kind of, you know, building up trust and things happens over a longer period of time, doesn't it? It's those gestures, it's that behavior which you see, you know, over that longer period of time. You know, you can't really, I don't think, tell about someone, you know, really quickly and think, oh, they're the one, after about 1 or 2 dates. Unlikely, I would say. It does, you know, depend on, you know, what the people are like over a sustained period of time. So again, you know, I don't think anyone should take anything personally, but it's just a consequence of the, you know, current dating scene. The internet dating, you know, just allows people to do that.
I did find the more I did it, the less it stung when a lot of my 138 dates disappeared, many of them, more than half of them. So, and thinking of myself as like, oh, maybe they're just not, there's nothing wrong with me, they just weren't a good match for me. And there's, you know, plenty of others out there. That did start to remove the sting. I do have to say that when I met the right person, I kind of knew, I don't know, I can't exactly put that down to anything, but to give you, you know, real advice on it. But there is a gut instinct. You mentioned when we spoke on the phone yesterday about trusting your gut, and I know that you have a question about that as well.
Another man that I saw, you know, had a few dates with, very likable man, but he was a little bit unavailable and a workaholic, and he kept telling me that he would have all the time in the world for me in a couple of weeks and blah, 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 and said that he really liked me, thought about me all the time. My gut was telling me all sorts of different things. And I mean, this does happen. Men can be quite charming and not really deliver the goods. How do we deal with that? Do we cut that short straight away? Or do we give them a bit of time?
Yeah, what are the red flags and how do you cut it? When should you cut, Ruth?
Well, I think you're right. I think, you know, we have our gut. There's a thing called body knowledge. That's what the gut feeling is, that sometimes we just feel something is not right. You know, but you know how I said unrealistic expectations in the beginning, you know, women have, you know, an idea about how they think people should behave, you know, how often they should ring. I get a lot of girls go, but he didn't ring me back for 24 hours, you know, whereas I know a lot of men get distracted. They don't think like they got to ring or text right away, you know, so sometimes, you know, you've got to, like what you learned, Rebekah, is, you know, what to expect, you know, what's the norm. But there are these outliers that, you know, you have to expect that there is a range of behaviours and they won't always behave the way you are. But if they keep behaving in a way that doesn't work for you, they're not the person for you. You know, you tell them that that's really not working for me. And if they still ignore it, well, that's probably not the right person for you to want to spend your time with.
Martin, you mentioned at the beginning something about conscientiousness as being a predictor of long-term relationship. Someone who makes a good long-term relationship material, reliability. So I wonder if you could talk to that as being
yeah. I mean, and certainly similarity as well in what you're like. But yeah, those things are predictive of that. And I was just going to pick up as well on what you said earlier. If you're not happy with somebody, then the kind of good side of the amount of choice you have means that you've got the choice as well. So if you've got a gut feeling that you're not happy with somebody, then it's probably, I would have thought, certainly in my case, I would think, well, if I'm not happy with that particular relationship, let it go. If you've got that kind of gut instinct, however that might make you feel, then yeah, just don't do that, and you can find someone else just as easily as anyone else can, I think.
I remember when I started my first business, I was hiring people for the first time, and someone gave me some advice, which was how people behave in the interview process is going to be the absolute best that you're going to get from them. So you could watch how they interview. So not that dating is a job interview, but how people behave early on in a relationship is going to be the best. So it's not going to get suddenly all of a sudden get better. So if you're not happy with the behavior, then I think
it's like dating profile pictures, perhaps that's the best that anyone's going to look, isn't it? I think that so, and as you say, how they behave in that kind of first date is they're going to put on their best clothes, or not their best clothes, but they're going to put on their best front in that kind of first date. You want to get to know maybe those little habits perhaps that people have, which are not immediately obvious. So yeah.
Can I ask Martin? Can I ask Martin, what do you, because people ask me, and I'm not an expert, but you are, what are the sort of things that you should put in your profile that do attract? Because I see like very nice, attractive people who don't get a lot, their profile doesn't attract people. What sort of things, if you're a woman and you want to attract men, what do you put in?
Okay, so I think initially, get some help to sort of have some photos of you, your current photos, not photos which are portray you 15 years ago, or somebody's going to turn up your date expecting your younger brother or sister or something, aren't they? And that's you. So get somebody to help you with those photos. The general advice as well is to have some headshots and sort of full body shots, because people can see what you like. Those photos are your kind of shop window. The little bit of bio afterwards perhaps is almost supplementary, and especially with dating apps where people are swiping, they just
look at the photo.
Very unlikely that people's going to read everything if they've got so much choice. So get that photo right, I think, is the very first thing. There is some research which suggests that there are certain words that people can use in their profile, such as, I'm looking for a relationship, that kind of thing tends to perhaps entice people a little more. But one of the biggest sort of predictors of sustainable relationships is similarity. So it's a case of saying what you like, what you do. If somebody is similar to you, then that's going to work. So if I'm meeting someone who likes, let's say, swimming or cycling, that's what I'm interested in doing. That's what I would choose. If they're interested in other things, then perhaps that doesn't interest me because that's not what I'm interested in. We wouldn't get along, but we'd have different interests then. So I think it's those kind of little interests and things which attract people at the beginning as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Helen, and thank you, Sandy, for joining us. I do want to get to the questions from the audience because there's been a lot of questions. We've got 10 open questions already, and I know that there are many more that will come through. So if you want to have your questions answered in the next 10 minutes, please shoot the questions through. There's a couple of things that I've noticed on the chat that I just wanted to address. One, people have been talking about, is there such a thing as the one, and asking about Rod and I think I just want to address this. Are you looking for this kind of one amazing soulmate person, and once you find them, everything will be perfect? That I just don't think, after doing 138 dates, that is true at all. It was about finding someone who was a good person. And I thought, this is someone, has some similar interests to me. And I could see myself making this work, and it was a choice. So I don't think that, I don't know if you, Ruth or Martin, would like to add anything to that, but this idea of there being the one and you're looking for this perfect person, for me, it was really, I like this person and I can make this relationship work. And then it's a process of actually making the relationship work. It's never perfect.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's, people talk of the one in a kind of romantic context. It's almost the stuff of fairy tales. I might offend some people by saying that, but people talk about it's there's the one, and as you say, it's perhaps not the one. It's just somebody you can you can get along with, and then you have to work at that a little bit. If you're talking about something such as the one, there might be several ones, or there might be no one, rather depressingly, but it's more to do with not finding the one, but somebody you can get along with, somebody you think you can make a relationship work with, as you said, Rebecca. So maybe talking about the one is a I don't know, I think is a little bit bit of a kind of romantic illusion, if you like.
Yeah, relationships are going to be work. They're always going to be work, and I think that's, if you're looking for someone where it's not going to be work and everything's going to be perfect, that's going back to what we talked about at the beginning. It's just not realistic.
Can I just say, because Martin brought up that thing about similarities, and they say that people are actually looking for another version of themselves because that's what they feel really comfortable with, and that's where the similarities come in. But you were asking me before about breaking up relationships. What actually breaks up relationships is how well or badly people fight, how they resolve conflict. And I think you mentioned that in your book, didn't you, Rebecca, that that you have to be able to solve problems together, because if you don't have a partner in solving the problems, they often end up, you just fall out of love.
Okay, I'm going to go to rapid fire questions. So I'm going to try and get answers to your questions as quickly as possible. So Martin and Ruth, if we can just go quick. I'm going to jump in and answer some questions as well. Some of the questions are coming through chat, and I'm finding it hard because there's so much coming through chat. So if you can keep the questions in the Q&A, then I'll be more likely to see them. Someone asked a question which I want to ask about, what about dating in your 60s and 70s when the choices are really diminished? I mean, I speak to people who are dating in their 40s and 50s or 30s as well, and who say that the choices are much more limited than they would have been in their 20s. And I think that that's true, that, there is something to be said for a lot of nice guys get taken early, or women probably early, and then that's it. But and then when you go through a process of dating lots of people, you think, often you can come away from a first date going, why is this person single? They're amazing. And then you go on a second date and you're like, oh, okay, that's why they're single. So I think the answer is that the later you go, it's a volume game. There are still great people out there. I happened to find one of them after 138 dates, but you've got to be, he had just come out of a long-term relationship. He just started dating again. And I was able to, meet him at the perfect time for him. But if I wasn't in it, doing all those dates, you've got to be in it to win it. I think it's so dating in your 60s and 70s, I think it's going to be even more the case of numbers.
I think you're right. I think the amount of choice becomes more and more limited as time goes on. But I know that from my reading of this, that dating sites catering for people who are older is a sort of growing business, if you like, for dating sites. So there are more people using dating sites at that age. What we have to remember with online dating as well, very quickly, is that it's not a quick fix. It's not it's not like going down to the shop and buying yourself some milk or some cereal or something. It's not like that. It does take a little bit of work. It does take a bit of time sometimes. Unless you're care to kind of settle for anything, which in relationships would be, in my view, madness. Then you wouldn't do that. So it does take a little bit of time, and we know that the amount of choice does diminish as you get older because people are already taken, as you say. But nevertheless, there is some choice there, and it's definitely a very, 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 very strong possibility that you're going to meet somebody in that age group.
Thank you, Martin. I'm going to go through these questions really fast. Ruth, is it a good idea to ask your date early on in the piece when you're getting to know each other what their dreams and goals are? I.e., do they believe in marriage? Are they looking for a serious relationship? Do they want kids? And how do you know if they're genuine in their answer? So when would you ask that question?
Not for quite a while. Not, you know, I think that's, you know, a lot of men think, you know, there's a thing called the pursue withdraw dynamic in relationships, romantic, well, all relationships really. And when people feel pursued, they tend to withdraw. So if you're already putting it to them, can you please make a commitment here? And they're not, you know, they may not be ready. They may not be ready at all, or they may not really have decided whether they're really that interested in you or not. It can be a real killer, I think, early, you know, to do it too early. Because I think a lot of you know men, a lot of men online are looking for, and I should be brief, are looking for sex, and some of them are looking for relationships, but some of them, while they're looking for sex, find the person they think is the person they want to be with as well. But that takes a bit of time to figure out if you tick enough boxes that I want to spend my life with you.
So not early on. So, you know, how many, because you don't want to, if you're in your, you know, 30s in particular, and you're looking for someone who wants to have kids, how long do you give it? Because
well, you can ask them, you sort of get an impression about, you know, do you like kids?
Yeah.
You know, what's you sort of get a feeling for whether people have the same sort of goal, you know, same sort of hopes, I think.
Yeah.
You know, before long.
Okay. Are there dangers in displaying your vulnerability too early in a dating relationship? Whoever would like to answer that, jump in.
Oh, okay.
And isn't displaying your vulnerability too?
Vulnerability. Depends what you mean by vulnerability, I guess. Maybe
this goes to the point that Ruth made before, and I've seen a lot in the chat about this, about, you know, surely men aren't looking for women that are needy. Can you just clarify what that point is that you made? Because you're not saying to be needy, right, Ruth?
No, you know, when people are, you know, I've spoken to some girls and they were saying the best way, you know, you're saying how to go to a first date is to feel comfortable in your own skin. And that's why, you know, working on your fears and how you face them and things can make you much more relaxed. And that makes people feel comfortable. If you go along and you're you know, showing your anxiety and you sort of already tell them, you know, but sort of put yourself down or talk about all your failures in relationships and everything, it does make them think that you're a bit of a problem. And people aren't looking for problems. They're looking for people to make them feel good and enhance their life, really.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? Because when we talk about that, you need to show vulnerability, and it's just, I think it's very difficult. But when you're just being yourself, it kind of somehow comes together. I don't know. Yeah. But if you're in your head and you're thinking, I need to be more vulnerable, what can I share with it? And you're thinking, oh no, I shouldn't. Should I talk about beasts coming across as too strong? That's when it all falls over. So I know that this is not perfect advice, but this thing of dating and relationships is not a perfect formula.
I think if you're going to be in a relationship with somebody, you need to be yourself ultimately, don't you? So, you know, if you're going to be living with somebody, then, you know, they're going to see what you like as yourself. So please don't sort of go into a date acting and pretending to be something you're not, because you know, if you want the sustainable relationship with somebody, then ultimately you have to be yourself, you have to be truthful, you have to be honest. So you are what you are. Whether you're vulnerable or not, that is you ultimately. That's the kind of bottom line of, you know, what somebody's gonna get at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah. Okay, Ruth, really quick answer. The longer I'm single, the more urgent it feels to be in a relationship. I try not to let this overtake my thinking, but it's still in my subconscious. Any tips for dropping that pressure?
Yeah.
Rephrasing it.
Yeah. Breathe, take deep breaths and just let it go. And it, you know, if it's meant to be, it will happen. But the more desperate you get, the more, you know, you're working against your own best interest.
Yeah. And freeze your eggs. If you're in your 30s and you want to have a family, I wish I didn't do that, but I did, which I talk about in the book, but I kind of wish that I had, and that's definitely the advice to give to other women now, is take that pressure, the clock pressure off if you can. Okay, I'm a self-sabotager. I pull the pin before someone can reject me because I'm looking for validation, but I'm also looking for a long-term partner. Any tips? Go to therapy?
Well, that's what I call a preemptive strike.
Yeah.
People who think, you know, they've got stories about they're the sort of person that isn't going to be, you know, kept or wanted in the end, that to protect themselves, they take the control and they make it break up, because they go, well, at least I did it. But that's, at the end of the day, it's still, you know, you still haven't got a relationship. It's much better to try and work to make it work. And not, you know, like you say, nobody's perfect. We're all allowed to be flawed human beings, you know, but you've got to be brave like you were, Rebekah.
Yeah. It's hard. So I was looking through all the chat and the questions are just flying in. So there's a lot of questions that have come up around this relationship that you have with your parent, and people asking, what if you don't have a good relationship with your mother or father, or with someone that you're kind of seeing doesn't have a good relationship? Is that a showstopper? What can you do to? Obviously, it's not, but
no, but it will affect how they react.
So what about you, though? If you have a bad relationship with one of your parents, how can you make sure that that does not impact how you are in a relationship with others? Well, I think going into your romantic relationship.
I think unless you've already done the work and come to accept, you know, that's the parent you got. It may not be the ideal parent, but you know, there's a book, an old book called "It's Never Too Late to Have a Happy Childhood." So it's like you've got to reparent you've got to be kind to yourself and give yourself what you didn't get there. You don't have to stay a victim of that bad relationship.
Exactly, yeah. And that relationship with your parent doesn't mean it's your fault. It might be the fault of your parent anyway. So you know, don't bring all the blame back onto yourself, I would say.
No.
Yeah. And just recognize it. You might go into certain thought patterns, or like, why? I think looking at your, you know, being self-reflective and looking at, you know, why are you looking for a particular something in a partner, and then questioning, is that something that's really important to you, or is that something that you're using you think is important because of something in your past?
You know, I think Martin was mentioning Daniel Carnahan's first order, second order thinking, because when you do first order, which is just react, that's about those old relationships. If you can get a bit of insight about why do you react like that, it gives you a chance to stand back and think about, how do I get a better result?
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
I just want to get through some more of these questions, because I know that we're running slightly over time, but I want to get through. There's some great questions in here. What do you do if someone gets too physically close to you too quickly? So this is an intimacy question. Maybe we can just talk about how intimacy should build in a relationship. If somebody wants to be for someone else, or, you know, it's a process of building trust, right? So
yeah, well, it's like I was saying before, that pursue, withdraw.
Yeah.
Do you mean emotionally close or physically close?
Physically close. So physical intimacy. When should that come, and how should that build? And what do you do when someone wants to be physically intimate before you're ready?
Well, I think that there's, I just reread that book, The Chase, by Samantha Brett.
Yeah.
And she was saying that, you know, men are hunters and they like the hunt. And if they, you know, it's a very easy hunt, they turn the corner, they see an animal, they kill it, well, it's all over. All the excitement and the, you know, the adrenaline has gone out of it. So often people feel pressured, especially nowadays, to have sex too early. You know, but that's not necessarily going to win you a relationship. So, you know, valuing that level of intimacy, because, you know, especially for women, it really is about emotional intimacy more than even just physical intimacy. So I think you're entitled to guard yourself, as Helen was saying, in terms of, you know, when you feel ready with the trust.
Willing to wait, then they're not the right match for you.
No.
That's the other thing. I mean, I always talk about lots of things that in my journey that I did, like there's been questions on the chat about screening calls as well. So I would always meet people online and then I would do screening calls. And if people didn't want to do a screening call, that's fine, because that's a good way of me screening them out, because they're obviously not serious. But same as if you go through the process of dating someone, if they are not willing to wait until you're comfortable, then they're obviously not the right person for you. And, you know, that can be hurtful, but the only way to kind of try and take the sting out of it is to recognize that there probably is someone out there who is perfect, you know, who not perfect, but who is willing to, you know, who will care for you better.
Respect your wishes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. How do you know when to work on a relationship and when it's time to leave? Maybe we could also tie this in with a question is about how to identify a narcissist early in the stage of a relationship. So how do you identify a narcissist, and when do you know when it's time to move on from a relationship?
Martin, are you an expert in narcissists?
Not especially. Do you want to take the first question? How do we know when it's time to move on? I think that's probably more in your...
I deal with a lot of, you know, partners of narcissists, and it seems to be there's a lot of narcissism. I don't know why, but there certainly is a lot of narcissism out there. And the interesting thing about narcissists is that they do have a dark side. They do lack empathy, but in order to counterbalance that, they have to have a very charming side. So they're very good at sucking people in, you know, they're good at marketing themselves, but it's how you see them treat people. Mm-hmm. And they often treat, you know, people who are there to serve them in outside very well, but they don't treat their family, and they don't treat, you know, the people who they think they love them, they don't treat them very well. So if you don't feel that the person makes you feel good, that's not the person you need to be with.
I think it's down to you, isn't it, to think of that as well. The people who, if that's not the person you want, then, you know, it's got to be what makes you happy. Yeah. In terms of narcissism as well, just remember there are kind of degrees of narcissism. It's not a sort of categorical. It's not that people are narcissists or not narcissists. There is a sort of, you know, continuum, if you of narcissism. So might be a little bit more difficult to recognize that people are kind of slightly narcissistic or you know, at some time. But I think it's, as you said there, Ruth, it's kind of down to you what makes you, you know, satisfied, happy in that relationship, which counts really.
It's a lack of empathy, I think, is one of the narcissistic traits.
Yes.
So if you're feeling that your feelings are being disregarded, or that they're blaming you, then that's a pretty good sign.
Okay, and that's a sign that it's time to move on, because it's not going to get any better.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I think we are going to wrap it up there. We have gone slightly over time, but there's so many questions, we could keep going all night, but it is getting late. It's after 9 o'clock. Thank you so much, Martin, for joining us from Cardiff. I recommend everyone checks out your website, which we've put up in the chat. There's some really interesting articles and videos there. Thank you again, Ruth, for joining us and for all of your insights. I really appreciate them. Lots of them are in my book, which I'll hold up again. We're going to share a link to the book if anybody wants to check it out. Rod, could you put that in the chat? I want to thank Helen and Sandy for coming on and being so brave and sharing your questions with the community. It really added so much having you on tonight. We're running these sessions for another 2 weeks. So next week we are meeting Sydney, or is Australia's kind of elite matchmaker. So she's the top matchmaker in Australia, matchmaking lots of couples. So she'll give us lots of insights into what she sees, how she sees kind of relationships forming, what people are coming to her and asking her for. You know, she gets all the feedback from the first dates as well. And we're also meeting 3 couples, including me and Rod, and we'll be talking about that first date. What did the 3 couples find interesting in each other's profiles? How did the first date go? What were they both attracted to? So I think it would be something I thought would be really, I would have really been interested in knowing, is from real couples that had had success. What was it that was the spark for them? So then, you know, just to give us that insight. So we'll be meeting 3 couples plus Trudy Gilbert next Tuesday night, same time. Rod has just shared the link in the chat, but it's the same kind of Eventbrite as this one's. And thank you very much to RSVP for putting these events together. It is the dating site for people who are serious about finding a relationship. And thank you all for joining us. I think that's pretty much everything that I had to say. We've put a link to next week's event in the chat. Thank you again, Ruth and Martin. It's been a really lovely conversation, and I know that I've learned heaps. Thank you.